Brass tacks.
A drug addict takes his first fix of the day. It's a measure of his addiction, his shame perhaps, that he prefers to remain anonymous. But this man is doing nothing illegal. The drug he's taking to overcome depression was prescribed by his doctor.
I wish I'd never seen it. I wish I'd never started taking it ever. It's just made your life a misery for me, I think. None of the doctors ever told us that I would get addicted to them.
That man was taking lorazepam, better known as Ativan. It's a tranquilizer, prescribed for nervousness, anxiety and depression. Hundreds of thousands of people take it. Many become addicted to it. Brass Tacks has investigated the effect Ativan has had on a number of addicts. And we've discovered that as long ago as last March, the government's Drug Safety Committee was urged to consider phasing it out. Most GPs probably don't know that. You might think that they should. And you might think it odd that a drug prescribed to help people can all too often leave them addicted and then in pain when they try to kick the habit. At the end of tonight's report, I'll be giving the Brass Tacks phone number in the hope that you'll tell us what you think. But first, this report by Zainab Badawi.
This picture hanging on public display reflects the private agony of a man's fight against Ativan. Michael Jennings has been addicted to the drug for 8 years and is at last struggling to come off it.
At the time I was doing this particular drawing, I was really pretty low with the withdrawal. I just asked the man who popped in that day if he would sit like that. So that's the way I was feeling, more or less. I just tried to get it down. The isolation and the loneliness, pretty hopeless, beaten up. I call it despair.
Michael's love of art is the only thing which helps him through the worst of the withdrawal from Ativan. He's been trying to come off the drug for nearly a year.
When you're coming off the Ativan, you feel totally isolated. You can't make contact with anybody. The confidence is totally shattered, you know. Social life doesn't exist. You've got no friends, no girlfriends. You can't hold a conversation at all with anybody, you know. Life's really grim, you know. One time, when I was particularly bad with the whole business, I wanted to die, you know. I was praying for to die.
Ativan, which is prescribed on the NHS as lorazepam, is a tranquilizer and is used to treat stress and anxiety. In Britain today, it's thought at least 250,000 people are addicted to it. This woman used Ativan for 10 years. She claims her addiction has cost her her children. This man says addiction to the drug wrecked his career. He's taking legal action against his doctor. And this woman was given Ativan for wedding day nerves. 12 years later, she's housebound with agoraphobia.
Well, I think that the pharmaceutical industry and the medical profession made a mistake. I mean, it was an understandable mistake because what they didn't realize was that we could get dependent, we have patients dependent who are still taking normal doses. We've been used to thinking of patients increasing the dose, so if you were taking the normal therapeutic dose, you couldn't be dependent, where we were wrong.
Ativan was introduced in 1973, a latecomer to the family of tranquilizers known as the benzodiazapenes. By then, Valium was the most popular drug in the group. But some people were looking for an even more effective solution to the stresses and strains of their lives. This was the answer many of them found, a tiny tablet containing 1 milligram of Ativan. These little pills, they come in 2 strengths, bring great relief from stress and tension. The worries which had brought those people to the doctor's surgery in the first place were replaced by a tremendous sense of well-being on taking these tablets. It was a feeling which so many of them became addicted to and is now known as the Ativan buzz.
It's just as though you're drinking about 4 or 5 pints straight off in that one pill, and it really acts that fast. In about 10 minutes, you're really on cloud 9. It's a really great effect, you know. And it's easy to get addicted because it's that great in the beginning. Within about 10 minutes, you're not tense anymore, and you're more or less happy. Your worries is dulled, and it's really nice. But that doesn't last. After about a month or 2 months, the effect of the Ativan just wasn't there. And by this time, you just want to take more Ativan. You know, you take 4 a day instead of 3 and 5. But I never got to that stage. I just kept it at 3 a day.
Michael was first given Ativan by his doctor when he couldn't cope with pressure at work in the shipyards. But if he found getting addicted to Ativan easy, getting the prescriptions for it was even simpler.
Getting the prescriptions off the doctor's really the easiest part of the whole business. I've never seen the doctor for a repeat prescription of tranquilizers. I've never seen him for about 3 years now. I just see the receptionist and I get the repeat prescription that way, you know.
Michael's doctor doesn't even know he's now trying to come off Ativan. By cutting his pills into tiny bits, Michael takes just a little less Ativan each time. It's a slow withdrawal. It's taken him 8 months to reduce his daily dose by 1 tablet.
The withdrawal, it's the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. I experienced the loss of my father 4 years ago, you know. And that's about the baddest effect you can get, I think, in this life, losing somebody. But the withdrawal, it's worse than that. It's actually worse than bereavement, you know.
Michael's story is nothing new to Dr. Vernon Coleman. Every week he receives hundreds of letters from people addicted to Ativan. He realised there were particular problems with the drug after he wrote a book about tranquilizers.
After that book came out, I got an enormous number of letters. In the first year, I got about 12,000 letters. And most of those were from people who had been given one specific benzodiazepine tranquilizer called Ativan. It's impossible to say what letters have had the greatest impact because the spread of agony has been so great. But all I can tell you is that over the last 10 or 15 years, I've had thousands and thousands of letters from people on just about every aspect of medicine. Complaining, talking, worrying, people's anxieties, people's worries, people's fears. But never, ever have I come across a problem which has worried people or caused so much agony as the problem of Ativan, the problem that has been produced by this particular drug.
Sarah Westenra's problems began when she suffered postnatal depression in New Zealand. On her return to Britain, she was prescribed Ativan. At first it helped, but soon, like so many others, she fell into the Ativan trap. She found she needed stronger doses for it to take effect, but was left feeling permanently drugged. She couldn't cope with her 2 children.
While I was taking it, I didn't know that they existed. I was asleep. I was just totally asleep. I got up in the morning. If my turn to take the children to the school, I'd take them and come back and go to sleep. And if not, I didn't get out of bed. I'd send them off to school and go back to bed. I'd sleep after lunch. I'd sleep in the afternoon. I'd sleep after dinner. As soon as the television went on, I slept all evening. But they've coped. They've done all the shopping, walking the dog when I've not been able to, coping with their own dentist appointments, doctors, schools. I've never been able to get up to their grown-up schools to see any of the meetings or their work or anything else. I just can't do it. So they've had to cope with all these things by themselves. They've had to come home quite frequently to a mother in floods of tears who looks as if she's about to go totally insane and is saying, I'm going mad. And they've had to cope with that.
Sarah finally came off Ativan last year when she realised the pressure was too much for her family. But she feels the drug has stolen part of her life.
I missed out my children growing up. When I came back to this country in 1975, I was quite awake and I was aware that I had 2 children. But there's an enormous great gap when they've obviously grown up. They've done all the things children are supposed to do. But it wasn't until I actually finished coming off the Ativan that I actually woke up, quite literally woke up and said, hey, I've got 2 kids and they're nice and I like them as people. I just didn't notice. I was asleep. That sums it up. I was asleep.
But for Belinda, Sarah's 16-year-old daughter, her mother's recovery has come too late.
She's finished school, done her O-levels, and she's gone back to New Zealand where she was born, to my husband's family. And the first opportunity, she's up sticks and gone.
15-year-old Derek is still at home, but not for long. He'll join his sister in New Zealand when he too leaves school.
One's gone, and the other will be going as soon as he possibly can, which is round about July, August, something like that, in 1989. As soon as he leaves school, he'll be going to New Zealand as well.
When Ativan was first licensed in 1974, Wyeth, the manufacturer, warned only of some sleep disturbance if the drug was stopped abruptly. But within a few years, more and more patients were showing signs of addiction, and more doctors were growing concerned. Consultant psychiatrist Malcolm Lader is a member of the government committee which reviews every drug in Britain.
Well, I can remember wondering why my patients were going on taking these drugs for a long time, in the middle 1970s. But I think it was really about the beginning of the 1980s that we became convinced that there was a problem, even in patients who were taking normal therapeutic doses, that is, the doses prescribed by the doctors. They hadn't abused the drugs, they weren't taking handfuls, they were still taking the doses that they'd been originally prescribed.
Significantly, Wyeth was concerned and consulted Professor Lader.
They came to see me and we discussed it, and they did agree that there was a problem, and they agreed to the modifications in the data sheet which had took place then.
That new data sheet in 1979 carried the first warning of possible withdrawal problems with Ativan. 3 times since then, Wyeth have strengthened those warnings. Now they say the drug should be used for only 6 to 8 weeks at a time. Leading medical journals have added their voice to the concern. One article after another has focused on new evidence of the drug's effects on patients. 2 years ago, this major publication expressed
great concern about dependence.
In July this year, it said,
Lorazepam is particularly troublesome.
Yet doctors continue to give the drug to patients. Despite these warnings, prescriptions rose steadily to a peak of 3.5 million. Professor Lader thinks it's time doctors stopped prescribing the drug.
I am particularly concerned about 1 or 2 compounds of which lorazepam heads the list, and I feel that this compound should not now be prescribed because of its problems which may arise in some patients.
Professor Lader is not alone in his concern. The government agency which has the power to ban drugs is the Committee on the Safety of Medicines. Earlier this year, it commissioned a report on lorazepam. The findings have not been made public. Brass Tacks has obtained a copy of that report. Its recommendations are emphatic. It says the government should consider phasing out the use of lorazepam. It couldn't suggest an overnight ban, but for one reason only. Too many people are addicted to it.
To withdraw the drug at present would cause distress to many patients already taking it, since adequate substitution with other benzodiazepines is not always possible.
The committee now says it wants to look at the whole group of benzodiazepines.
There's no scientific evidence to indicate that one particular tranquilizer is worse than another. So really we have a problem with a class, or a group of medicines, the benzodiazepines. And so the committee is anxious to take steps to solve the problem for the group as a whole.
But still, there may not be scientific evidence that lorazepam causes more problems than any of the other tranquilizers of the same group, but the anecdotal evidence seems to be quite overwhelming that there are real problems with lorazepam.
There are problems with lorazepam, but there are problems with diazepam, Valium, all the other members of the same class. And to act just against one would actually be wrong, because there is a problem with the whole group in terms of withdrawal. A number of people who've consulted suspect there may be problems particular to lorazepam, but they all agree that the problem is with the whole class of tranquilizers, and that there is no real scientific evidence to pick out one particular